Hey everybody, welcome back to Photorec.tv. I'm Toby, and in this video, this is a video I have had in my brain for so long. I'm excited to finally get it out there. I want to share several options for getting better star photos. Milky Way, night sky, astro landscapes. I've got a couple of tips that cost you absolutely nothing, and well, some tips that cost you a little bit more than nothing. Let's get started. Let's start with a basic tip. And this may or may not be easy for you, but if you want better photos of the stars, you need to get yourself to some dark skies, away from the light pollution. That's going to make a huge difference, no matter what gear you're using. DarkSightFinder.com is a great resource for finding the darker skies. But you got to think, not only do you need to get to the dark sky, but if you're in the northern hemisphere and you're really thinking about those Milky Way photos, you need to not only find dark sky, but dark sky to your south. That's the direction the Milky Way is going to rise. So keep that in mind, because if you just eke out just to the north of some bright town, your Milky Way pictures are going to be very frustrating. Now, I'll just say this, don't despair if you can't get yourself to the darkest skies on the map. You can still take decent star photos. Maybe change your focus and think about getting star trails. I've successfully captured star trails in downtown Miami City. True story. One of the other things that will maybe help you not to despair is astrophotography can often be combined with a family vacation. So get out to one of these beautiful places, explore it during the day with your family and enjoy. And then that night after they go to bed or are inside watching TV, you can be out for an hour or two capturing the stars. It's not the same as trying to combine a serious landscape photo trip where you're waking them all up at sunrise and they're freezing to death and they're like, hey, can we just go now? I'm all done here. We hear about that a lot on our workshops. People are so happy to be able to be with a group of people that want to wait for the light to be good and are happy getting up early to go do all of this stuff. So just keep that in mind. Astrophotography and family vacations can be combined together. Now, unless you're photographing deep space objects, I think some of the best astro photos are ones that include some of the landscape. So I will say it is important to arrive at your scenes before the sun fully sets, or just shortly after, so you can get some sense of composition and what's happening in your foreground. It's happened to me more often than I would like to admit that I roll up somewhere after dark, I get out of the car, stars are ablaze, my mouth is agape, I love it. And then later I realized that my foreground is just absolute crap. And a quick bonus tip, the app PhotoPills, worth its weight in gold. It is super helpful to find out when the Milky Way is going to rise, where it's going to rise, and how it's going to line up, whether the moon will be up and how much illumination the moon is going to be casting over across the landscape and washing out the Milky Way. It is a very helpful app. I'll link to it right down below. I think most of you watching this know the amazing Milky Way photos that you're seeing posted online have been edited. They are stronger than what you would see with your own eyes. In this example here, I could certainly see the Milky Way with my own eyes, but it was faint. Just a little bit of editing can really make a big difference. I'm using Lightroom, but there are free options like raw therapy. And again, just a minute of editing can make a dramatic difference in the look of your images. I find myself often brightening the overall exposure a little, and then boosting the whites and the highlights a little bit more to make those stars and the milky part of the Milky Way pop. But you do have to be careful not to over brighten, one, to make it look fake, or two, you're going to be bringing up any areas of light pollution as well. The white balance. For night skies, it's a very personal decision. I typically like somewhere around 4800 Kelvin, and I do set that when I'm shooting, just so I get feedback on the camera of what this is going to look like once I start editing it. But sometimes I do cool the sky a touch more in editing. One photo is good, 10 is even better. Here's what I love about stacking. It can work really, really well, and it's affordable. The program I use and recommend for the Mac is Starry Landscape Stacker. It costs 40 bucks. Windows users, check out Sequitur. It's completely free. Now, the idea is to boost the signal to noise ratio. Literally, that statement literally applies here. I love it. So let's say you capture a nice photo, 11 millimeters, f1.8, ISO 3200 with a 15-second shutter speed. You can't go longer than 15 seconds or the stars will start to trail because of the rotation of the Earth. That means that no longer will they be little pinpoints of light, but they'll be streaks of light. But if you take 15 of those shots, this specifically designed software figures out the difference between the stars, the noise, the sky, and it produces very clean results. Plus, it deletes airplane trails, and at least Starry Landscape Stacker, it really is easy to use. It has on-screen prompts that walk you through what you need to do on each step. I just follow those, and it turns out great. Maybe you're a purist. Maybe you don't want to deal with all this software jibber-jabber. You want beautiful shots straight out of the camera. Well, honestly, you're going to need to do a little editing. But what's really going to help you be happier out in the field is a faster lens. Now, this is assuming you're using just a kit lens. Oftentimes, you're limited to f3.5 as its widest aperture, or maybe f4. When photographing the stars, I think it starts to get exciting with lenses at f2.8 and wider. If you can get your hands on a wide-angle lens that offers f2.8 or less, f1.8, f1.4, oh, be still my beating heart. This is lovely. You're going to be able to achieve brighter star photos right out of the camera. Focal length range, I think 14 to 24. It's a great range for Astro landscape shots. And the good news is there are lots of affordable manual focus only lenses in that range. And even some that are autofocus. Not that you're going to be able to autofocus on the stars necessarily, but it does make it a more versatile lens. This is the Tamron 20mm f2.8, and it is $250. This is the IRIX 15mm f2.4, and it's somewhere in that range of $300, $400. This is a very wide-angle Canon lens, 10 to 18, but it stinks for stars because its maximum aperture is f4.5. Now, if you have a newer modern sensor, you can get to those high ISOs that will help you counteract that limiting aperture. But again, you're going to make things a lot easier for yourself with a faster wide-angle lens. I've got a list of some of my favorites right down below. When we talked about the settings used for shooting the stars, we talked about being limited with the length of your shutter speed, because depending on your focal length, at certain shutter speeds, the stars are going to start to trail. They'll no longer be little points of light. That's due to the Earth's rotation. But what if you could put your camera on a device that would counteract that rotation? Another way to say it is put your camera on a device that's going to track the stars. That's going to allow you to shoot for very long exposures without trailing. Let's go back to that 11mm f1.8 ISO 3200 example with a 15-second exposure. If you could go to 30 seconds, you could drop that ISO in half, 1600. If you go to a minute, drop it in half again to 800. If you could shoot for 2 minutes, you could drop your ISO to 400. Bright star photos. They look gorgeous. And not only that, at those longer exposures, you really start to collect interesting colors of light from some of the stars. It makes a huge difference. Now, there is a catch. We'll talk about that in a moment. But 2 years ago, I did pick this up. This is the Move, Shoot, Move, a star tracker. It costs about $250, which is very similar to a cheap wide-angle lens, and it does just what I described. Tracks the stars. Now, there are other star trackers on the market that do offer some serious benefits over this, but I've never considered any of those. They're much larger and more cumbersome to work with, and I really appreciate, for my travel, the compactness of this little tracker, and it's also quite easy to set up. I'm very happy with the results I'm getting. Now, I said there was a catch. There's actually two catches. One, you need to align the head with Polaris, the North Star. This means that you need to be able to find it and see it. If it's obscured behind mountains, trees, or clouds, you're not going to get great results. You can approximate using an app, again, like PhotoPills, but this is going to limit your exposure length. You won't be able to get to those 2 or even 3 or 4 minute long exposures. Now, Southern Hemisphere residents, don't worry, all 12% of you, there is a way to do it in the Southern Hemisphere as well. It's not quite as precise, but it's close. And here's the second catch. If you were thinking critically about this, you might have already kind of come up in your brain. If this device is rotating your camera to keep the stars tracked, what happens to the foreground? It does get blurry. So anytime you want an epic shot, you're going to need 2 photos, a tracked shot of the sky and a non-tracked shot for the landscape. You're gonna then need to blend these photos together in something like Photoshop, which I have to say, the sky replacement tool, I love it. It makes this a whole lot easier. But this might sound like a lot of work, and it is, but once you get comfortable with the setup, it's quite straightforward. It does help to be comfortable with Photoshop because even with that sky replacement, it's going to usually take a little bit of additional work to make it all look good and blend nicely. You can actually combine everything that I've shared in this video to get really great results. You go someplace dark with a very fast wide-angle lens, mount it on a star tracker, capture multiple shots, tracked and stacked. It's pretty good. It's pretty exciting. Or, you know what, just take a nice vacation somewhere with the family and play around shooting the stars with whatever you have. I've never regretted standing under the stars, and while you're waiting for these long exposures to happen, look up. Count the shooting stars, the satellites, or just enjoy the magnificence of standing under a star-filled sky. And hope that breathing you hear off in the woods is just a deer, like the one time I got the poop scared out of me. But it was just a deer. I hope you found this video helpful. As always, if you've got questions, you can leave them right down below in the comments or find me on Instagram. That's linked below as well. And if you appreciated this video, quick thumbs up is appreciated. And you can hit that subscribe button along with the little bell so you'll be notified of future videos. Or maybe you want to come along on a workshop with us. Details about that is down below as well. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.